Hi, so I'm Valarie, and I need y'all to bear with me. You're gonna think for a minute, dear God, what have I gotten myself into? Why am I listening to this? But I promise it's all gonna end up great. Just you gotta trust me on this ride, okay? So if you start to get a little overwhelmed or think that maybe you've made a mistake, just have faith in me, please. We're gonna get to some happy stuff. So this talk, hello. Oh, Saturnus. That does not work. So before we start with the actual talk, I like to know who's speaking to me. So for those who don't know me, hi, I'm Valarie. I am first and foremost a wife to my bestie. He is a software architect. He is smart, he is funny, he is easy on the eyes, he is my trophy husband. And I'm very lucky I get to be married to my best friend. We just had our 10th wedding anniversary, and that is to date the longest marriage I've ever had. And we were raising 3 adorable tiny humans. If everyone could just real fast wish Anya a happy 9th birthday. Today is her birthday. And I couldn't see leaving my kiddo at home on her birthday, so. I also have awesome sisters. I've done judo for 30 years, because it's good to have hobbies. I'm gonna talk about judo later. It'll all make sense. And just a fun Val fact, I am an ordained minister, so if anyone wants a real fast wedding after this, I got the laws in Georgia on lock. But yeah, so I come from a different background. So I got into software about 5-6 years ago, and I did that via the Georgia Tech Coding Boot Camp, web development boot camp, which is great because about halfway through I realized I hate web development, so neat. But I fell in love with DevOps because I had done 5 years hard time as a stay-at-home parent. And as it turns out, the values, principles, and ideals of DevOps culture are almost one-for-one translation from stay-at-home parent ideals. It's all about conflict resolution, getting people to communicate, resource allocation, time management. It's great. Thinking about what could go wrong, mitigating it before it happens. It's DevOps engineers are the stay-at-home mommies of the dev team. Fight me on it. And so I worked as a DevOps engineer for the first 4 years, and then I transitioned into developer advocacy. And this makes a lot of sense because in a previous life, when I was young and making poor choices, I got a psych degree, which that's neat because I got to spend $85,000 for a degree which basically qualifies me to say, would you like fries with that? So neat. I actually ended up getting most of a master's of counseling before I realized I can't do compassionate detachment. I was coming home from my practicums during my grad work, sobbing hysterically for hours over the people I'd spoken to all day, carrying their problems with me, and not everyone is cut out to leave it at work, so I had to, for my own mental health, not go into counseling. So the neat thing is that psych degree, one, really helps with parenting. Just gonna throw that. It's like an unfair advantage in the parenting realm and marriage realm. But also, the last 6 years of being in this community, I hear things that people say, and I start to think, I'm hearing the same people, or different people say the same things in a lot of different places. Maybe this is systemic. So I started researching about a year ago the things we're gonna talk about tonight. And it's been an interesting ride. What we're gonna talk about, okay, seriously? Hey, that doesn't work. That's neat. Hey, we're gonna talk about 5 basic problems that are impacting our industry a disproportionate amount. And by that I mean more than they did before the pandemic, more than they did after the shutdowns ended, but before the layoffs started. And things that I'm hearing as I travel the world going to conferences, I do, full disclosure, I pulled a lot of my numbers from US sources because, well, here I live. But the same problems are extant in other countries, just to different degrees. We're gonna talk about 5 things. And this is the part where I asked you to stay with me and have faith. Because for the first few minutes, while I'm talking about definitions and what these things are, you might be like, wow, this is not a feel-good time. This is depressing. It's not gonna be, because then we're gonna wrap it up with, what do we do? How do we take care of ourselves? The title of this talk was, The Product Doesn't Develop Itself. At the end of the day, a lot of the things that I'm passionate about sound to people like feel-good topics. For example, when I worked at Airbus, I went to senior leadership with a proposal for comprehensive parental leave. And they were like, oh, you just want to hold that baby longer? And I'm like, no, actually. While I do enjoy holding my newborn child, let me show you a business case for retaining talent. And let me show you the bugs that I put into our code when I was 6 weeks postpartum back in the office, not sleeping, and just completely drained. Still there, by the way, I haven't worked for Airbus in years. I still get text messages on certain errors because they can't find my phone number to pull it out. It's neat. You do not want a recently postpartum person, someone who hasn't, there's a reason the first thing we do to torture another human being is take away their sleep. You do not want sleep-deprived people touching your code. So everything we're going to talk about tonight, if you find yourself uncomfortable, there's a few reasons why. One, maybe you need to go home and think about why you're uncomfortable and lean into it and take care of yourself. Two, we all make software. We want good software. Yeah, by show of hands, who likes to deliver quality work? I do. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't do our best work. And that is just a fact. No matter how good you are, there's always room for improvement. Even if you manage to not take care of yourself and deliver quality work, imagine how much better it could be if you took care of your company's most valuable resource. That'd be you. So I'm gonna talk about some things. I'm going to do a disclaimer just because I don't like being sued, not a fan of it. I'm not a medical provider. I'm not a doctor. I shan't be giving medical advice. Just going to throw that out. However, I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express once. Oh my God, do I have to buy it dinner? Hey, so let's just get into the fun stuff. Let's talk about burnout, depression, and anxiety. Woo, it's party. It's so temperamental. Okay, so burnout. We've all heard this phrase, yes? And whatever mental image is coming to mind, it's real simple, and it's ubiquitous in our industry right now. It's a collection of symptoms that, at the end of the day, this is the problem right here, reduced professional efficacy. Now, from an employer's standpoint, you being burnt out, you having, and the basic cause for burnout, by the way, looks like work stress that's not well managed. Spoiler alert, it's probably not you mismanaging your work stress. It's probably people in leadership positions not managing your work stress, not allocating assignments appropriately based on actual capacity, not unicorn ninja rockstar capacity. How many of us, I mean, the day the shutdown started, I went from going to my nice bougie office and drinking my free coffee and feeling fancy to being at home with 3 small children, 2 of whom had Zoom school, 1 of whom was a nursing infant, and they didn't expect my productivity to tank. That's funny. That's funny. They wanted the same number of Jira tickets passing through my queue. Oh, it's not going to happen, y'all. I got news. The reduced efficacy is the most important part of burnout. From your employer's standpoint, obviously they want you doing a great job, right? However, not doing well at work is one of the biggest stressors that leads to the next 2 things we're going to talk about. And I like to think of the next 2 as gifts with purchase on burnout. Things that you get just as a, here you go, well, take 2, they're small. So when it comes to depression, there's 2 kinds of depression. There's the clinical, lay on the couch, Dr. Freud's going to diagnose you. There's major depressive disorder. Now that's a fancy term for real depressed for a long period of time. It's real quick to get diagnosed with that, too quick in my opinion, but you have to have X number of symptoms for at least 2 weeks. There's a whole thing. But then there's situational depression. As it turns out, when you lose a family member or loved one, it's quite normal to have all of these symptoms while you're grieving. When you go through, I don't know, being downsized unexpectedly, and you think, how am I going to feed these tiny humans and pay my mortgage and all that good stuff? These symptoms can exist in the context of major depressive disorder, sure, but they can exist for a few weeks after, I don't know, not completing a project to your satisfaction or getting harangued at work over something. Or situational depression is still depression. It might not require the same level of intervention, but it's a problem. And if you'll notice, some of the symptoms of depression make it real hard to do your job. One of the big characteristics of major depressive disorder is, not only do you have these symptoms and are they lasting at least 2 weeks, but is it making it harder to do your work? Now, fun fact, if you look at the statistics on depression in software, depending on what studies you're looking at, sample size, all that good stuff, you're looking at 80 to 83% of developers saying, yes, in the last year, I've been burnt out. And slightly smaller percentage saying, yes, I'm depressed. One of the ways I prepared for this was I sent out an anonymous Google form asking actual people in this industry that I am somehow connected to on the Twitterverse or the LinkedIns or whatever platform they found it on. Hey, can you just answer some questions about burnout, depression, anxiety? 87% of my respondents, got just over 200 last I checked, about 87% said, yeah, I meet the clinical diagnosis criteria for major depressive disorder right now. That's a lot. Now, it's a small sample size. It's anecdata. I'm not taking that to peer-reviewed journal anytime soon. But it is telling that when I go to conferences and we're sitting in the hallway track, which is my favorite track, the number of people who are describing being depressed every day that don't know they're depressed, so they're not doing anything to fix it. Something to consider. The other gift with purchase on burnout is anxiety. Now, again, much like depression, anxiety, it can be GAD, I hate acronyms, by the way. It can be generalized anxiety disorder, requiring a trip to the doc and meds and all these good things. Probably not. It could be, I don't know, several people in your company just got downsized and they swear your job's not in trouble, but now you're preoccupied 24/7 with that concern. Am I going to lose my job any day? That takes a physical toll. All three of these things harm your body. How? Well, all three of them cause sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation is the fastest way to physical health problems. It is cruel sleep deprivation. As someone who has had 3 children, all of whom came out over 10 pounds and didn't sleep because they were too busy eating everything in sight, I can tell you sleep deprivation is cruel and unusual punishment. When you are stressed, when you're feeling this anxiety all the time, and I don't mean, some anxiety is good. As it turns out, if you're alone in a dark alley in the middle of the night walking home and you start to feel that uh-oh feeling, that's good. There's a whole book about it called The Gift of Fear. It's great. But 24/7 anxiety causes your cortisol, the hormone that really places stress on your body, to just skyrocket. That's bad. Causes inflammation of everything internally. And then you're in this vicious cycle where now your body doesn't feel well because your heart and your brain have been hurting, but then your body not feeling well makes everything exacerbated emotionally and mentally. And now we're into a vicious, vicious cycle, a little chicken and egg situation with what felt crappy first, right? These things need to be dealt with, and we're going to get to the how after we talk about the next one. I kind of lumped the next 2 into one because I can, as it turns out. We're going to talk about it. Tech has a problem. The slide we're about to go through, I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, and they are not to be answered out loud. They're for you to think about. But I want you to imagine curly braces around anytime you see the word drinking or use. Now, tech in particular has an issue with alcohol abuse and opioid and anti-anxiety medicine abuse. Something like the latest numbers I read were 1 in 5 people in software are taking prescribed medications that they do not need because they are now addicted. That's a lot. Think about how many people are in this room. Hey, about 10% of people in software have passed that threshold from using alcohol to abuse and now are into addiction. And those are 3 very different things. Just so we're clear, I'm not anti-alcohol. Don't get me wrong here, people. But there's definitely lines, okay? And so I want you to imagine there's curly braces around the word drinking or use anytime you see it, because you might be abusing something else. Food, sex, gambling, shopping. Literally anything that you might have an issue with that's causing your brain to flood with dopamine because that feels good because you're dealing with those other 3 we just talked about, might need to be addressed. So let's just have some fun. This is why I get invited to all the parties. So yeah, all these questions, I want you to know I have low-key asked people at conferences the last year, during hallway tracks, speakers' dinners, meet and greets. The number of people who don't know that they have a drinking problem is terrifying. But have you ever had way more than you intended to? And does it happen frequently? That's a thing to consider. Tried to stop but couldn't. Oh, this is a neat one. I was privy to a whole conversation at a conference, about 15 people at a big table, where they discussed this fun little catchphrase, 2 p.m. is the new 5 p.m. Because we're all working remotely and making jokes about the 2 p.m. nightcap, the first one of the night. Night 1. Oh, this one, I was at a conference not long ago, and they were setting up open bars. It looked to be about 30 minutes until that bar was good to go. And I watched a group of people leave to go to the bar across the street and start drinking because they just couldn't wait 30 minutes. Something that might need to be examined and thought about. Is this a problem? I don't know. Only an individual can assess that for themselves. This one. Now, full disclosure, I did not like my answers to these questions. I no longer drink alcohol because of it. I stopped drinking before I got to a place where I was getting on stage drunk, before I got to a place where that was a big problem. But it was getting close. I could feel it coming. I was still holding out and not drinking before I spoke. But I think if I'd gone another year or so, it might have gotten there. So it's something to think about. Is it starting to infringe on work? Is that 2 p.m. nightcap messing with your productivity the rest of the day? Oh yeah, this one. If you've ever had a family member or friend say, God, I wish you would stop whatever it is. Curly braces, insert your issue here. Something to consider. The people who know us best often are more insightful because we're in the forest. We can't see our own trees. This is another one. I was at a family gathering. I'm going to out my relatives. They're going to love me. But I was at a family gathering. We were discussing an upcoming baby shower for a relative that did not drink for religious reasons. And several of my cousins were very upset about how they were going to sneak alcohol into this dry event. And I was like, and go with me here, we could just not drink for those like 2-3 hours and then go party. But that was the train of thought. Do we even want to go to something if we can't drink? Oh gosh. Okay, so how many times have you been, I have done this. I've been this gal. Use me as a cautionary tale. I mean, I went to an event that Microsoft sponsored. They rented out an entire Taco Mac. I didn't think about counting my drinks because it was an open bar. We woke up the next morning and my coworker had carried me back to my Airbnb and slept on the floor to be respectful. It saved me. He said he could hear it in the middle of a sentence where I started speaking in cursive. And he decided to usher me on out of there. Nice man, raised well. Want to send his mom a thank you note. But what could have happened to me if I hadn't had a trusted buddy there to get me home safely? Have you ever, I knew a gentleman through work that his wife didn't like alcohol in the house, so he would drink at work at happy hours. And he would drink as much as he possibly could before driving home. Because once he was home, there's no alcohol allowed in the house. That's a problem, right? That's dangerous, terrifying.
I have a question. Why do you think that burnout will lead to this? Why can't you think that burnout can have other more serious health issues?
Oh yeah.
Blood pressure, diabetes.
Oh yeah. No, we're getting to it.
Alcohol is not because I don't drink.
Yeah.
And for me, you couldn't pay me money to drink because that's something I don't do. But still, blood pressure, burnout, impact me other ways.
Oh yeah, no, we're getting to the physical, taking care of your body. However, statistically speaking, this is a big problem for the majority of people. I love that you don't have to worry about it though. My sister doesn't have to worry about it. It's just a thing that doesn't exist in her world. When she gets burnt out, she turns to other things that harm her body and cause things that are unhealthy. But this is a big one in this particular community overall. So one of the biggest problems with burnout, depression, and anxiety and substance issues is that the symptoms list all overlap. And the number of addicts I know who were diagnosed with depression, anxiety, given a bunch of drugs, told to treat it that way, but once they sobered up, realized, oh my God, it was just the side effects. It was the constant hangovers, or the trying to get to my dealer, or whatever was going on causing those symptoms. I don't have chemical depression. I don't need these meds. I just needed to get sober. Something to consider. It's really hard to diagnose someone who's abusing their body with substances because, well, lots of overlapping symptoms. And then, are you building up tolerance? I was at a conference and was, saying something about, oh yeah, no, I can't have another one. I've had 4, I'm done. And people were laughing and saying, 4? Are you kidding me? I need 8 just to feel anything. And like it was a badge of honor or something to be proud of, but it's, it's a neurotoxin. Maybe less is better. So we talked a lot about this just because I love y'all. Even if I don't know you, I love you dearly. That's why I do what I do. And I wish that I'd figured out some things about me. I didn't know I was burnt out for a year. I was waking up and crying sometimes, thinking about the work I had to do. And I didn't know I was burnt out. I didn't realize that I needed to stop drinking. Mercifully, I didn't lose everything. There was no rock bottom. But I didn't realize until other people did me the kindness of asking me questions like this to think about it. I didn't realize that being on the road all the time and drinking all the time was making me depressed until I got off the road. It's like, oh, right. So this is why we're talking about this. I do one more thing. The number of people who travel for software, who drink like fish on airplanes, at speakers' dinners, at conferences, at after parties, and get home and don't feel well for a couple of days, that's alcohol withdrawal. It's funny. It can be mild shakes. It can just be anxiety, sweating, not sleeping, just feeling like garbage in general for about 3 days after you stop drinking. If you've ever gotten off the road and had those sort of symptoms, might be time to reevaluate your relationship. Okay, now that we've been uplifted and talked about all the fun, happy things, now what? So as an industry, we have these issues. If they don't apply to you, if you don't have to worry about any substance use disorder, burnout, depression, or anxiety, if you are just sitting pretty, how do you help those around us, right? How do we lift each other up? But most importantly, how do we take care of ourselves? Well, self-care. I hate this phrase because I, again, did 5 years as a stay-at-home parent. And in those circles, self-care looks like bubble bath. And actually, the number of times where I would say, God, I really need a break. And people are like, oh, here's a bottle of wine. Let's drink. Okay, but how does that deal with my stress over not getting all these things done? How does sitting and not doing anything useful except hurting me take away my stress? When I talk about self-care, I talk about very pragmatic things. And the name of the game is stress reduction. How do we lower the level of stress? Because again, stress leads to higher cortisol, which leads to high blood pressure, diabetes, all sorts of internal inflammation. It messes with your neurotransmitters, which can make you depressed when you otherwise wouldn't be. So set boundaries. What does that look like at work? That's a hard one and a scary one, and that's why I put it first. It is scary if you're sitting at the end of a sprint and you've got just enough time to wrap up your team obligations. This is the agreed upon, this is what I was going to do, and someone suddenly piles a bunch of work on you at the last minute and sets unrealistic expectations. It is terrifying to say no. But what's more terrifying? Taking on that work and not having a boundary, not doing it, not having enough hours in the day. I've watched people I love stay awake for days on end, trying to meet arbitrary deadlines that at the end of the day could have been pushed. It could have been pushed. But the less sleep they got, the crappier their work got, the more frustrated they got. I mean, I love my husband so much, but he is very old school. And if there's a deadline, then by golly, he will stay awake all night to meet it. and be genuinely confused as to why he just can't think clearly for days. It's funny how that works. Setting boundaries is hard. And I'm not saying say no like a toddler with your boss, but it's appropriate and acceptable to say, well, given my capacity, given this much obligation already on my plate, I don't think taking on 5 extra initiatives is realistic, but I can take these 2. Can you reallocate those 3? It is absolutely good to draw a line in the sand about what you reasonably can do. If you can't meet an expectation, how will you excel? How will you shine? If you set yourself up for failure with crap boundaries, now you've set yourself up to have low self-esteem, which leads to burnout, which leads to depression, which leads to health problems, and, right? Setting boundaries is important. And maybe that looks like, I've been guilty of things like, if you're on a team across time zones, I've been that gal on the East Coast with my laptop right here, the headset, cooking at the stove, where they watch me cook, because it's 5 p.m. my time, with a kid holding their homework up while I'm, number 3's wrong. Hold on one second. Yeah, no, that'll be done tomorrow. What? That's ridiculous. That's crap boundary setting. Again, I'm not saying that you refuse to do things outside of your work hours, but it's acceptable and good to say, okay, I'm going to redefine my work hours, and I'll work until this hour because my West Coast colleagues need it, but between this hour and this hour, I'm away. This is my time where I have to do these things. I have to go get my kid from the bus stop or the school. I need to cook. I need to do whatever it is. It's okay to set boundaries by doing things like setting your notifications to silent from a certain time at night to a certain time in the morning with very little chatter that can get through, only emergency stuff. These are basic boundaries. They'll make a world of difference. And also, I'm just going to say it out loud, if you allow people to pile on more than you can reasonably handle, it'll only get worse, especially if you accomplish it. If you somehow, by the skin of your teeth, turn in something acceptable, but not your best, but acceptable, the next time they're just going to do it again. And expect that. And it's not fair. I love that I got in trouble working at Salesforce for doing too much one time. End of sprint, I had 2.5 days until the sprint ended. I'd done all of my tickets. And so I took something off of next sprint to go ahead and start working on. And my boss pulled me aside immediately and said, what are you doing? That's next sprint. I was like, oh, well, I'm done. I don't want to get paid to drink coffee and play with my kids. I just thought I'd do some work. He said, no, people will expect it if you do that. Stop that. I put it there for a reason. I don't want them making unrealistic expectations for my team. Put it back. Yes, sir. He was like, go play with your kids and drink coffee. I'll see you Monday. Okay. But, it's because he had the vision to say, if I allow my team to constantly go above and beyond past this already high standard, it's not like we were setting the bar down here. He already had a lot of work assigned, but he had the vision to say, if I want to maintain my team health, I have to draw these boundaries, and if they won't draw them, I will. And I was a good leader. Loved him. Find joy. So, one of the problems with burnout and all of the things we've discussed is your dopamine levels get messed up. Dopamine is a happy hormone, makes you feel good. It's joy, right? You got to find some dopamine. And store-bought's fine if you can't make your own. And maybe that looks like some sort of medication, but ideally, natural dopamine. Where do you get it? Food that tastes good, especially sugary food, but food that tastes good. Physical intimacy, working out, roller coasters, hobbies, laughter, all dump dopamine. Makes you feel good. Big fan. What else does it do? It helps you concentrate. Fun fact, most ADD medications have some sort of interplay with dopamine because the theory is that we can't regulate our own, and that's what drives us to distraction. Oversimplifying massively, but there it is. Says the chick on Concerta that loves my dopamine receptors being blocked so that what I do make is more efficient. Yay! It's the only way I can focus. Find your joy. And so what does that look like? If you had a hobby before the pandemic, pick it back up. One of my goals right now is to get back on the mats because fighting is my happy place, and I've been off the mats. It's a problem. Maybe you like to paint. Maybe you Like to make your own projects, not work projects. Even if it looks like carving out 15 minutes a day to do something creative for you. Maybe it's an axe throwing league once a week, or some sort of intramural sports ball team with your neighborhood association. I don't know what people do these days, you crazy kids. Bowling leagues, billiards. There's all sorts of things that you can do, even if it's just once a week or 15 minutes a day, to dump some dopamine. Give your brain that release, step out of work mode, and take care of you. Hygiene. I'm not going to call anyone out here, but I know I'm not alone because I've heard people talk during the shutdowns, going days, weeks for some, without a shower became normal. Because where were we going? My husband knows I'm depressed when he notices that I'm not getting my nails done. I'm not doing my roots. I'm not taking care of my body. I'm eating food that makes me feel like garbage, these sorts of things. Like basic body self-care should not be a bonus. I hate it when people tell mommies, oh, you need to do something for yourself. Take a shower. No, a hot shower and a warm meal are bare basic human expectations. That is basic humaning, right? If you are so overworked that you don't have time to take care of your physical body, it's time to draw some boundaries around that. It's time to set aside time every day to take care of you. Work out, move your body. It doesn't have to look like, Olivia Newton-John in the gym, let's get physical. No. It can be as simple as gardening, going for a walk, doing literally anything that moves your body. Sleep. All right, how many people have been told, well, you need to get more sleep, like it's easy? Yeah, I can't say what I want to say to that because I'm being recorded and my 9-year-old's here, but I hate when people tell me, you should sleep more. Should I? That never occurred to me. But there are ways. I am now, I don't want to brag, I'm getting a solid 6 hours a night, which is the most I've had in 15 years. It's really exciting. And it took a while to figure out the right combination of things for me. But, there's a lot of basic sleep hygiene, like turning off any screens, blue light blockers. These bad boys have been awesome. I feel goofy meditating just as a person. But I love hypnosis tracks. I fall asleep to this hypnosis track, and in theory, it's saying nice things to me all night. It's great. It's like having a mom at 40 years old who just sits by my bed and sings me lullabies. It's great. It's like having a me. But you do whatever you have to do to figure out, and maybe it's an uncomfortable thing. I mean, for a while, I slept in a different room than my husband because of the snoring. I was like, I have to sleep. I can't produce good software if I'm not sleeping. It's a thing. Biohacking. What does that look like? First of all, if you have health insurance through work, go get a physical and ask them to check your vitamin levels and all the blood work. Like, really just make it rain at the phlebotomy lab. Just all the blood work. So little things like, I have an issue where I can't take over-the-counter supplements because really at that point all I'm doing is paying for very expensive pee, and I don't like that. So I had to do some research. Turns out you can get transdermal patches for your vitamins, and it actually delivers it appropriately, and now I'm not severely anemic. Yay. Your body's a machine. Debug it. If you're having problems, if you're not able to concentrate, you're not getting sleep, you're stressed out all the time, go ahead and start working on the physical hardware as well as the software. Meditate. Now, again, I suck at meditating. Lots of things are meditative. For me, fighting's meditative. And by that I mean, I have to be present. If you're playing punch face with your buddies, you'll get punched in the face if you're not present and paying attention. When I'm doing judo, I have to focus on my breathing, because if I start breathing like this, I'm a sucker to be thrown on the up and thrown on the down. No, I don't like that. Coloring. I don't love adult coloring books. However, study after study shows that 5 to 10 minutes a day gets your brain engaged differently and can reset your emotions for the next little bit. It's something to consider. Then there's like legit meditation. And do you know there's angry cussing meditations all over YouTube now? They're great. They make me laugh, which dumps dopamine. Big fan. But something to get into your body, step away from work, step away from the stress, and figure out what you need. Even if it's 3 minutes a day, it's 3 minutes. And support groups. right? I cannot emphasize how awesome community is. Spoiler alert, I consider this to be a support group. I'm gonna blather for about 5 more minutes, and then I'm done. But the conversations that are happening at the tables before I spoke, and that are gonna happen after and at Taco Mac, this is a support group. Because everyone in this room knows what your high-stress job is like because we're all doing it, right? Support groups don't have to be like, something out of Fight Club where Marla Singer might show up. As it turns out, this is a support group. Your Slack communities where you get on and rant about things, that's a support group for dealing with burnout and getting advice and commiserating. And remove stress. Again, sometimes removing stress looks like leaving your job for another one. Sometimes it has to be that way. But sometimes it just looks like starting to establish boundaries. I will warn you, when you start establishing boundaries and you've never done it before, a lot of people will use my least favorite word. They'll say, you're selfish. No. I can tell you from firsthand experience, there's a reason they tell you to put on your own mask first. When I don't take care of me, I'm a crap partner, a crap mom, a crap employee, a crap athlete. I'm just a mediocre human if I don't take care of me. When I take care of me, I am magnificent and can show up for the people who need me like a boss, right? But I can't pour from an empty cup, no one can. Don't ever feel selfish for taking care of you. It matters. We're gonna zoom through the next chunk because there's all sorts of reasons you might wanna consider professional help. I am gonna throw this out. Oh, tell me what I did. I pushed the wrong button. Pratik, make it work. Glenn, make it work. So I am gonna talk about these things for just a minute. Who here has employee resource groups through work and health insurance? And yeah? Okay, there's a reason they give us health insurance. Use it. When I say life consultant, so everyone in my family that needs one has a therapist. Because in business, if we don't have a subject matter expert on a given problem, what do? We hire a consultant to come in. I'm not an expert on how to live my life, clearly. So I have a life consultant. My therapist is great. Love my shrink. It's the best hour of my week. If you do think that you might want to talk to a professional about some medical or medication help, cool, go to a psychiatrist. They're great for that, if you think that that's where you are. If you are struggling with any sort of abuse or addiction, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Use your employees' resources. I'm going to brag on JFrog. JFrog is exemplary as far as employee benefits go. Looking through their employer offerings, they cover residential treatment for all sorts of things. And to be blunt, if you found that you've gone from abuse to addiction, it's a good time to go to rehab. If you find that you need to take some time off work and, I don't know, recharge, take a sabbatical, whatever it is, there's all sorts of options for most companies to do so. Even if it just looks like FMLA for a couple weeks while you go somewhere and don't work and recharge. Maybe it looks like a month or more. If you do need any sort of residential mental health or addiction care, again, while JFrog is a shining light of how it should be, almost any insurance should cover that. It's worth talking about. And what's neat is that they can't let you go for that. It's fun how it's protected. There's also other options. Some people don't like to talk about their problems in front of strangers or with their boss. My kids joke that my middle name is Make It Weird. I have no problem being uncomfortable in front of people. But some people want to keep it private. There are partial hospitalization programs and intense outpatient programs where, so during the pandemic, I got super depressed, non-functionally depressed. And for 6 weeks, I worked a half a day because I spent my morning doing 3 hours of therapy down the road in an IOP. Because I did not deal well with being isolated. I have a compromised immune system, so I didn't leave my house. It was ugly. I am a social creature, so that was not pleasant for me. But again, I was really comfortable doing that during the day and saying I need to work half days for 6 weeks. There are all sorts of evening and remote options if you just need to deal with some stuff at night online and not tell your boss. That's between you and your God, right? Oh, and I forgot meetings. And when I say meetings, again, this counts as a meeting. If you are dealing with some sort of addiction, there's any number of recovery meetings. If you're dealing with burnout, depression, anxiety, there are grief support groups, there are depression support groups, and then there's just hobbies where you hang out with people and it perks you up, and most humans are dealing with this crap, so it sort of turns into a de facto support group. Again, for fuck's sake. Oh, I love that I just got recorded saying that. It's only the second time I've dropped an F-bomb from stage, but this is the first time it was recorded. Hi, Mom. But yeah, so yeah. One more back. Yeah, so again, whatever you're dealing with, use your employee resource, whatever it is, whatever assistance program is offered, use your health insurance. That's why you pay for it. That's why it's there. And ideally, get a hold of these things before they're a problem, right? I've talked to a few people where they're like, yeah, especially around drinking, because this topic comes up at like parties, but they're like, yeah, I don't have a problem yet. I mean, I'm still over here. I'm just sort of skirting this. I'm like, yeah, but now is the time to stop. Before you get over here and you've got 3 DUIs and you've lost your job and custody case. Now's a great time to get ahead of that. Right? So, like, there's a DR plan for this, and I'm telling you, you gotta back up now. If you find that, you know, after looking at these things, you might be a little burnt out, deal with it now, because it's easier now. Now's always the time. It's a great time.
I have a different question on this, right? So let's step back. I understand all this, right? So let's for a second think that the team you're working, they're frustrated. The members of the other team, you're working with the other team, they're frustrated. It's considered impolite to be screaming at the top of your lungs to get a point across or to have, for lack of a better word, a fight in a meeting.
Okay.
Product related, nothing personal. These things happen in a environment. So, workplace, what you're talking about is, it's right, I understand those are their facts, these are things. Where is, because you mentioned the meeting thing, that's why I'm bringing this up, the workplace thing, right?
Okay.
Why don't employers, or have you seen employers do some kind of a consultation or team games, or bring people who really say that? Because some people may think yelling or shouting, not intentionally, but it happens, right? Then some people may lose confidence in themselves, but at the same time, for some people you may stymie it out, because that's your way to let it go.
Yeah.
So what exactly is, can you address that point? Because I'm going to look at that aspect of it as well.
Okay, so a couple things. One, sadly, we can't control other people. We can only control our choices. We can't control how people make us feel, but we can control how we respond to those feelings. So what does this look like? You were discussing what happens when people blow up in meetings. Have I heard of employers doing something to mitigate that or stop that before it happens? Was that the point of that question?
For example, if you get, let's say somebody gets angry, they scream, right? Next thing you know, HR is talking to you. Next thing HR will be talking to you because either you are, I'm not blaming them because social conditions are such that you don't know what can happen the next day.
Okay, yes, okay, so here's the thing. There are lots of things that happen in this world that seem like they're out of nowhere. They seem spontaneous, but actually pressure's been building for some time. If you are living your day-to-day life, burnt out, depressed, or with high anxiety, you are building up pressure to eventually explode. Part of why I talk about getting ahead of things before they're problematic is before that happens. I've been in a meeting where a gentleman blew up. He'd been upset about things at work for months and done nothing about it other than quietly seethe. So when he started yelling during this meeting, to be blunt, I don't do well with people yelling. It's a neat little trauma response. I go into fight or flight mode, and at work I tend to flee because I don't want to fight my colleagues. Weird that way. The trouble was brewing long before. Part of why I push so hard for people to figure out where their mental health is and take stock of it regularly is people don't explode just out of nowhere. It's typically a long time coming. So dealing with these things early and frequently assessing where you are is really important to not end up in a situation where you've now lost it. Now, as someone who does not ever want to be judged by my worst days and has days that I hope no one judges me for, because they're one day out of a whole life, we're all going to have bad days. And hurt people hurt people. If you are living your life hurting every day, you're going to end up accidentally blowing up, causing problems. It's just how it works, right? It is never too late to take a step back, say, okay, I'm feeling these things. I can either have a negative reaction, and here are the negative consequences we all have to deal with, or I can choose how I'm going to respond to this in a more positive way. And sometimes that has looked like, for me and lots of other people, when I start to feel my blood boil, I don't want to brag, but I've never beaten my children. But every parent in this room knows that at some point of parenthood or teaching children or whatever context you're around the tiny humans, your blood's going to boil. And you're going to have that moment where it's like snap and pasta, right? It's bend, snap. Yeah, I am a big fan of the mommy timeout. For me, what this looks like is when I feel that anger and aggression mounting, okay, you go to your room for your own protection. I'm taking a timeout. I'm taking me away from this. And I have done that in meetings at work. When I feel myself getting frustrated, I once had a colleague that misgendered one of my other colleagues, and it angered me every time, because it was not an accident, it was on purpose, and I can't handle that. When I would feel the anger start, there were times I just got up in the middle of a meeting and walked out, and then was vocal as to why. Once I'd calmed down and could say so respectfully and kindly, and look, I don't mean to be a problem, but I will not sit here with this. This is my boundary. I will put up with a great many things. That's not one of them. So again, once you've reached the point of blowing up in a meeting, yeah, HR is going to talk to you about it. It's scary. We live in a day and age where, you'll love this, when I give my disaster recovery talk overseas, I make active shooter jokes, and they don't think it's funny because who would do that? That would never happen. Yeah, we do live in a time where that's a concern. There's a reason that the phrase going postal is ubiquitous in our vernacular. This is why we have to take care of ourselves before we get there, right? Okay, so this one. It is scary to go to your boss. I've had to do it a few times. I had to go to my boss at one point and say, hey, I need to do therapy for 3 hours a day for 6 weeks. I can either go on short-term disability and not be here at all, or I can be at diminished capacity. Up to you. It is scary to go to your boss and say, hey, last year I went through a mugging last fall that really messed with me because I don't like fighting. I'm actually a pacifist, so having a fist fight with an adult was not on my to-do list. And I came home a little bit broken, and I needed to put me back together again. And so I went somewhere for 3 weeks for trauma therapy. And I had to go to my boss and say, hey, I'm not doing great. I need to do this because I'm not okay. It was scary. And that's the cool thing about being scared is you're only actually capable of being brave when you're afraid to do something but do it anyway. It's neat how that works. So just a little bit of advice around if you have to go to your boss for anything. A lot of the things we've talked about can be mitigated on your own or with community or friends and family or medical professionals or. But you might need to talk to your boss when it comes to the boundary setting or any extended care you might need. I mean, hell, even some managers, if you block off every Thursday at 2 for therapy, they might want to know why you don't ever take a meeting at 2 on Thursday. I like to put it on the calendar labeled therapy. 1, it lets people know I'm safe to talk to about their stuff. And 2, I like to lead by example. Everyone should have a life consultant. It's just good business. But if you're going to share, who you share with and why. So a lot of people think of me as an open book because I'm up here saying things like, oh yeah, I went to trauma therapy. I have a whole category of things about me that none of y'all will ever know because those are private. It's a very small percentage and it lives over in this little box over here. The rest of it, I'm an open book. Only you can determine your comfort level with what you share and why. I have definitely, so I don't lie as a general rule. I should say it's because it goes against my morals, values, and ethics, but that's not true. It's because I suck at it. And I don't like to get caught, so I just don't do it. I have no poker face. It's awful. I have no poker face, and I can't lie. So there are times where I definitely use my internal thesaurus, and I choose my words very carefully to say, oh, like when I talked about needing trauma therapy with my boss, I definitely chose my words carefully because I was telling him something very personal. I told him probably a little more than I needed to get the job done, but we had that kind of relationship. Only you know what kind of relationship you have with your leadership. And if you need to go to bat for yourself, to set boundaries, to get your work hours changed, to get different accommodations, whatever it is you need to talk to them about, only you know what you can feel comfortable sharing. I always advocate for share what you need to share to get your objectives met, maybe leave the rest. For yourself, for your spouse, for your friends, for this room, for your community, for other places, but I'm also an oversharer, so. But, I always care about other people's comfort more. If you're going in to ask for something, again, and this is true no matter what it is, when you're going in to ask your manager for something, research it ahead of time and know what you're asking for. If you go to your manager and say, I'm burnt out, help me. That's not good. One, your manager doesn't know what you need the way that you do. Two, they're busy. They got stuff to do. It's always better, and I try to teach my children this. Don't come to me and say, I'm hungry, make me something. Come to me and say, hey, I want this, this, and this, and I can't make them for these reasons. Will you help me with these things? I'm much more likely to say yes, because it's less overwhelming. When I have gone to a couple managers in the past and needed to do things, I had to do some short-term disability for physical therapy after a nasty car wreck. I didn't go and say, I can't stand or sit comfortably because my spine's fractured. I went in with hey, these are our short-term disability benefits. Here's the physical therapy program I can do. Here's how many weeks I anticipate, and here's what I need from you. If you can lay out for your manager what you need, instead of saying, I'm working too many hours, say, hey, because of these reasons, I find myself working 12 hours a day. That's not sustainable. I propose a modified schedule that looks like this, and put it in front of them. Anytime you have your ask in mind, it's well-researched and thought out, much more likely to get a yes, because they don't want to deal with it. Let's just be honest. They don't want to deal with it. They just want software made, right? Advocating for yourself and being prepared ahead of time is much more likely to get the answer you want. Stay positive. So it's hard when you're burnt out not to be like, God, I just hate this job. It's always better to go in and instead of saying, hey, I really hate my job, I'm miserable right now, can we fix this? It's a little bit better to go in and say, hey, I really care about this company and this product, whether you do or not. I'm just throwing that out. I care about my paycheck very much. But I really care about this product, and I'm not able to deliver my best work. So I'm asking for these things to take care of me so that I can deliver my best work. Again, basic of negotiating is start out with how doing what you want benefits the other person.